Then Job answered and said, "Oh, that my grief were fully weighed, and my calamity laid with it on the scales. For then it would be heavier than the sand of the sea. Therefore my words have been rash. For the arrows of the Almighty are within me. My spirit drinks in their poison. The terrors of God are arrayed against me. Does the wild donkey bray when it has grass, or does the ox low over its fodder? Can flavorless food be eaten without salt? Or is there any taste in the white of an egg? My soul refuses to touch them. They are as loathsome food to me. Oh, that I might have my request, that God would grant me the thing that I long for. That it would please God to crush me, that he would loose his hand and cut me off. Then I would still have comfort. Though in anguish I would exult, he will not spare, for I have not concealed the words of the Holy One. What strength do I have that I should hope? And what is my end that I should prolong my life? Is my strength the strength of stones, or is my flesh bronze? Is my help not within me, and is success driven from me? To him who is afflicted, kindness should be shown by his friend, even though he forsakes the fear of the Almighty. My brothers have dealt deceitfully like a brook, like the streams of the brooks that pass away, which are dark because of the ice, and into which the snow vanishes. When it is warm, they cease to flow. When it is hot, they vanish from their place. The paths of their way turn aside. They go nowhere and perish. The caravans of Tema look. The travelers of Sheba hope for them. They are disappointed because they were confident. They come there and are confused. For now you are nothing. You see terror and are afraid. Did I ever say, "Bring something to me," or "Offer a bribe for me from your wealth," or "Deliver me from the enemy's hand," or "Redeem me from the hand of oppressors"? Teach me, and I will hold my tongue. Cause me to understand wherein I have erred. How forceful are right words! But what does your arguing prove? Do you intend to rebuke my words and the speeches of a desperate one, which are as wind? Yes, you overwhelm the fatherless, and you undermine your friend. Now therefore, be pleased to look at me, for I would never lie to your face. Yield now, let there be no injustice. Yes, concede my righteousness still stands. Is there injustice on my tongue? Cannot my taste discern the unsavory? Job has finally been given the floor. Eliphaz has finished his speech, the night vision, the shaking bones, the whispered theology, the beautiful promises aimed at the wrong wound, and now Job speaks. And what comes out is not a rebuttal. It is not a counter-argument assembled from competing scripture. It is something rawer and more honest than either of those things. It is a man trying to make someone else understand the weight of what he is carrying, and discovering in real time that language was not built to hold this much. He asks for a scale. He says, if you could take my grief, my actual grief, and put it on one side of a balance and pile the sand of every ocean on the other side, the grief would win. This is not hyperbole for effect. This is a man who has done the calculation in the dark and arrived at a number that has no name, and he acknowledges immediately that this is why his words have been rash. He is not walking back the cursing of his birthday or the calling up of Leviathan. He is explaining them. He is saying, you want to know why I spoke that way? Because the weight of this has no proportionate language. Rash words are what happens when the weight exceeds the vocabulary. And then he says something that every reader must stop and sit with. He says the arrows of the Almighty are within him. His spirit drinks their poison. The terrors of God are arrayed against him. And here is where the paradox that has been building since chapter 1 reaches its sharpest edge. Job does not know what the reader knows. He does not have access to the opening scene in heaven, the conversation between God and the adversary, the specific and documented transfer of permission that preceded every disaster. He is reasoning from inside the suffering, and from inside the suffering, the only architect large enough to have built this catastrophe is God. He is not wrong to identify the scale of what has happened as something beyond human origin. He is wrong about the hand that threw the arrows, but he does not know that yet. and the adversary is counting on him not knowing it, because a man who believes God is his enemy will not run toward God for rescue. He will run away, or he will lie down and wait to die, which is precisely where Job is being steered. He uses the animals to make his point, and the images are sharper than they first appear. Does a wild donkey bray when it has grass? Does an ox low when its feed is in front of it? The answer is no. Animals only cry out when something is wrong. Job is saying, I am not making noise because I enjoy the sound of my own suffering. I am making noise because something is catastrophically wrong, and I would be silent if it weren't. And then the food, the flavorless food, the white of an egg, the loathsome tastelessness of everything that is supposed to sustain him. His soul refuses to touch it. He is describing the deepest form of despair, the place where even the things designed to keep you alive lose their capacity to attract. He is not performing grief. He is reporting it. Then he makes the request that sounds like it contradicts everything a righteous man should want, and yet is the most honest thing he has said. He asks God to crush him, to loose his hand and cut him off. And in the same breath he says, then I would still have comfort. Then I would exult even in the anguish, because I have not concealed the words of the Holy One. This is the paradox at full volume. A man asking to be killed by the God he is defending. A man whose only comfort in the idea of death is that he has been faithful to the God he believes is killing him. He is not cursing God. He is not walking away. He is saying, if this is the end, let it be the end, but let the record show I did not lie. I did not hide what I knew. I did not trade my integrity for comfort. He would rather die honest than live compromised. That is not the speech of a man who has given up on God. That is the speech of a man who still believes that what he said about God matters, even if it costs him everything to have said it. Then he turns to Eliphaz, and the wound in the speech shifts from vertical to horizontal. He says, kindness should be shown to an afflicted man by his friend, even if that man has forsaken the fear of God, even at his worst, even in his most desperate hour. And then he delivers the most devastating image in the chapter. He calls his friends a brook, a seasonal stream that travelers in the desert plan their journeys around, that caravans from Tema and Sheba route themselves toward, because they have been told there is water there. And when they arrive, parched and depending on what they were promised, the stream bed is dry. The ice has melted. The snow has vanished in the heat. The water that was there in the cold season is gone in the season when it is needed most. You see terror and you are afraid, Job says. That is why you are doing this. That is why you are building your arguments against me. Not because you have discerned my sin, because my suffering frightens you. And the easiest way to stop being frightened by what happened to me is to find a reason it could not happen to you. And here is where the adversary's deepest strategy becomes visible. Because everything being poured into Job's mind in these exchanges, through the wife, through the cousin's night vision, through Eliphaz's careful and loving and catastrophically misaligned theology, is operating on the same frequency as the original temptation in the garden. Eve was not approached with a lie about God's non-existence. She was approached with a question about God's intention. Did God really say? And then the alternative was offered, not a rejection of God, but a reframing. You will not die. Your eyes will be opened. You will know good and evil. The fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil offered something real. It offered accurate information about the natural order. It told the truth about how things work in the visible world. Cause and effect, action and consequence. The moral accounting of a world where what you plant is what you harvest. Eliphaz has been handing Job exactly that fruit. Everything he has said is true at the level of the natural realm. Foolish men do reap what they sow. God does discipline those he loves. Affliction does have a source. The universe is morally ordered. None of these things are lies. They are the fruit of the tree of knowledge, accurate descriptions of how the natural world operates, offered to a man who needs the truth of the spiritual one. And Joby, sitting in the ash heap with his bones aching and his friends' voices filling the silence that God has not yet broken, is being invited to take a bite, to accept the natural explanation for a supernatural event, to locate himself within the visible moral order rather than within the invisible covenant identity that God established before the adversary ever asked permission to test him. Because the thing the adversary cannot afford is for Job to know who he is, not who he was. The greatest man in the East, the owner of thousands of animals, the father of 10 children. But who he is in the deepest sense, a man God called blameless, a man God pointed to with pride in front of the entire heavenly court, a man whose suffering is not the result of God's anger, but the result of God's confidence. If Job ever fully grasps that, if he stops arguing about what he did wrong and starts standing on what God already said about him, the adversary loses everything. Not just the test, the argument, the accusation, the entire case that a human being only loves God when the hedge is intact and the cattle are fat and the children are alive. So the feeding continues. Natural truth instead of covenant truth. Visible evidence instead of heavenly testimony. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil stands right there in the middle of the ash heap, bearing perfectly accurate fruit about how the world works, and Eve stood in a garden with everything she needed and reached for it anyway. Job is a righteous man sitting in ashes with nothing left, and the same hand is extending the same fruit with the same question underneath it. Did God really say you were blameless? Look around you. Does this look like the life of a man God is proud of? Job does not take the bite, not yet, not fully, but you can see him looking at the fruit. You can see him turning it over in his hands, and the evidence is in the last lines of the speech. Is there injustice on my tongue? Cannot my taste discern the unsavory? He is still standing on his innocence. He is still refusing to confess to a crime he did not commit. He is holding the fruit and not eating it. But he does not yet know the name of the hand that is offering it. And that is the most dangerous place in the story. Not the moment of surrender, but the moment just before it, when the fruit is in your hand and it looks like truth and tastes like wisdom, and the stream bed where your friends used to be has gone completely dry.